Chapter 4. Kess spent the next 3 days working nonstop. Unlike her human counterparts, she didn't need sleep, and she processed files at a tremendous rate. The legwork was the same as any human. She visited the sites of recent violence. At each site, she did what any detective would do. She examined the scene, reviewed security footage, and interviewed whoever was willing to talk. Den made the local paperwork available. By the end of the third day, she had a lot of data and few answers. The rally was in the Velen Corridor, a commercial strip on Tier 4. The largest crowd was there to protest enforcement of work permit rules. A minority sought stricter policing of the work permit rules. Both sides hated the security forces. 6 months ago, the area had been a working neighborhood. Repair shops, fabrication outlets, a few restaurants. Now every third storefront was shuttered, and the ones still open had steel grating bolted over the windows. If the purpose of the rallies, riots really, was to keep the people working, they had the opposite effect. One did not need to be a 3000 to understand the visual evidence. Kess dressed down. She wore a dark jacket, plain shirt, no badge. She wasn't undercover, she just wasn't advertising. She arrived early and walked the perimeter before the crowd filled in. Behind a shuttered repair shop, tucked into the mouth of a service alley, she found a pallet stacked with broken paving stone and fist-sized chunks of composite. Someone had hauled it in and set it where it could be reached in a hurry. A young man peeled off from a knot of others and came toward her. He had a scarf pulled up over his nose. He pressed a chunk of stone into her hand. "Not yet," he said. "Wait for the signal." "What signal?" "You'll know it." He looked her over once, decided she belonged, and moved on. Kess turned the stone over in her hand. She set it back on the pallet and positioned herself near the back of the crowd, close to a service alley that offered an exit if things turned ugly. The crowd was growing. The signs told the story. Stop the raids, hands off our neighbors, no papers, no crime. A few were blunter. One read "Cops out of Velen" in letters that dripped red paint. Another had a drawing of a municipal security badge with a boot print stamped over it. The signs looked professional. Same lettering style, same materials, same heavy cardstock. It was a come-as-you-are protest, rocks, and signage provided. A woman climbed onto a shipping crate near the front and started talking through an amplifier. She was young, maybe 30, with short hair, and spoke enthusiastically. She was good. She made a person want to watch and listen to her. Kess wondered if she was imported talent. 3 days ago, they dragged a family out of a residence on Block 16. Mother, father, 2 children. You know what their crime was? The father worked a fabrication job for 8 credits an hour. 8 credits. He showed up, he did the work, he went home to his kids, and they put him in a transport van like an animal. The speaker continued in the same tone, and the crowd erupted in all the right spots. By this time, Kess had taken images and video of the crowd. She processed them internally. She identified a couple of dozen individuals who, in her opinion, were the cheerleaders. They screamed and shouted the loudest and egged on those around them. Most of these were young men, but not all. Although they had taken the trouble to dress differently, they all had one thing in common. Their faces were covered. They had another similar characteristic. They weren't watching the speaker. They were cheerleading and watching each other, waiting for something. They were clustered together in groups of 2 and 3 and spaced throughout the crowd. Kess scanned the perimeter. Municipal security had a line set up at the far end of the corridor. Officers in riot gear, visors down, shields locked. Behind them, one of the heavy crowd control vehicles sat idling. It was a Graben, a 12-ton armored box on 6 wheels, built to push through dense urban terrain. The front was a flat ram plate, the windows were narrow slits. The speaker was building toward something. The crowd was getting louder. A bottle flew and shattered against a riot shield. Kess tracked the throw back to one of the young men she'd been watching. He had another bottle ready. He was grinning. The other plants had projectiles as well. Then the police line moved. It was a standard crowd push formation. Shields up, step forward, compress the space. The idea was to force the crowd backward and out of the corridor. It worked in textbooks. As soon as the lines got close, the projectiles flew, most crashing against the riot shields. A few struck security personnel. Then someone on the police side fired a deterrent canister. It arced over the shields and landed in the middle of the crowd. White smoke erupted. People screamed. The crowd surged backward away from the gas, trampling the people behind them. Kess moved laterally toward the wall. Trying to get out of the crush, the smoke was spreading. Her filtration system handled the chemical irritant without difficulty, but the humans around her were choking, stumbling, clawing at their eyes. The young men she'd been watching slipped on gas masks and began destroying things. One flipped a vendor's cart into the street. Another smashed the grating off a storefront window. The corridor had become chaotic with people running in every direction. The police line was advancing again, pushing deeper. The Graben had started to roll forward, its engine grinding through the noise. The real people, the residents, the families, they were trying to get out. The agitators were trying to keep it going. That was when Kess noticed the three of them, two men and a woman. The woman had a device in her hand. She showed it to the two men. The men looked at Kess and nodded. The men carried lengths of pipe. The woman had something in her right hand that Kess identified as a shock tool, a handheld unit that delivered a high-voltage discharge on contact. It could damage her systems depending on the quality, grade, and settings of the device. The two men split to either side while the woman came straight at her. They knew who she was. The woman reached her first. She swung the shock tool in a wide arc aimed at Kess's neck. Kess stepped inside the arc, caught the woman's wrist with her left hand, and held it. Pins extended from her hand, palm, and fingers. They were less than 2 millimeters long, thinner than a human hair, and they deployed from beneath the synthetic skin. The neurotoxin was a fast-acting paralytic. It entered through the skin, hit the bloodstream, and reached the central nervous system in seconds. The woman's eyes went wide. Her arm locked. Her legs stopped working. She dropped straight down, rigid, like a board falling over. Her eyes were open. She was conscious. She could see and hear everything. She just couldn't move. The first man was already swinging. The pipe caught Kess across the shoulder. It hurt. The 3000 series felt pain. The engineers had decided that pain was a necessary feedback mechanism and had included the full spectrum. She turned into the swing, closed the distance, and put her hand flat against his chest. The pins went through his shirt. He dropped the pipe. His body seized and he went down on top of the woman, his face frozen in an expression that was half surprise and half something worse. The second man hesitated. That was enough. Kess stepped over the first man's body, reached out and touched the second man's neck. Just touched it. He went rigid. He fell backward and hit the ground with his arms locked at his sides. Kess looked down at them. The woman was staring up at her, fully aware, unable to blink. The paralytic would eventually wear off. Until then, she would experience everything, feel everything, and be able to do nothing. Kess took close-up images of the three and stored the images in her internal memory. The plants and the more enthusiastic members of the crowd were now fully engaged with the security forces. Kess heard the Graben and turned. It was moving at walking speed, grinding forward through the corridor. The driver couldn't see the ground. The smoke was too thick and the viewing slits were too narrow and the bodies were too low. Kess looked down at the woman. "You're fucked now," Kess said and stepped back, out of the way. The front left wheel hit the second man first. It rolled over his legs and then his torso. He didn't scream because he couldn't. The right wheel caught the first man across the hips. The woman was between the wheel tracks. The undercarriage passed over her, but a rear wheel caught her. The Graben kept rolling. The driver didn't stop. Kess turned and walked toward the service alley. After leaving the riot, Kess made her way back to the municipal security building and to the office Den had provided, where she spent the next several hours processing what she'd captured. She cross-referenced her images against the criminal databases to which she had access and those Den had made available. By evening, she had something worth showing. She messaged Den and asked him to come up when he was free. Den came in with 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of her. "Thank you," she said. He sat down across from her. "Did you find something?" Den asked hopefully. "Maybe," she said, turning the screen on her desk sideways to allow Den to look. Earlier, she'd uploaded the images she'd captured at the Velen corridor. "Here," she said. The first set showed the crowd from the rear. She'd overlaid markers on the figures she'd identified as plants. They lit up in the image like a constellation. "See the masks?" Kess said. Den leaned forward. "Some people mask up at protests. Doesn't mean much." "Look at how they're standing. Clusters of 2 and 3, spaced evenly through the crowd. That's not random." Den was quiet for a moment. "It gets better," Kess said. She brought up another image. a pallet stacked with broken paving stone and chunks of composite, tucked into the mouth of a service alley. They came equipped, and this was staged behind the line before anyone showed up. Someone hauled in a pallet of rubble and set it where the crowd could reach it. Could still be opportunistic, he tried. Bring something just in case. Could be, except a kid in a mask handed me a rock and told me to wait for the signal. And none of them were watching the speaker. They were watching each other. Den sat back. Son of a bitch, he said. Now that you point it out, it's clear as day. It jumps out at you, doesn't it? Once you know, it is obvious, Kess agreed. How did you know? Den asked. I have a suspicious nature, Kess said. Den leaned forward and studied the screen. Who are they? I matched faces from my images to your databases. Thanks for the access, by the way. 3 came back to known associates of the Purity League. 2 are connected to the Alliance for Peace. So what do? He asked. Follow the money. Somebody is paying for this shit. Den looked at her. Find the money and you find whoever's pulling the strings, Kess said. How do you want to start? Den asked. Financial records. Both groups have to be moving money. I need access to banking records. That requires warrants. Warrants will tip our hand, Kess said. Den thought for a long time. I might know somebody, he finally said. Good. Den stood up, paused at the door. Detective, 3 protesters got run over by a GRA Ben. That's a fucking shame, Kess said. Den held her gaze for a moment. The 2 men are dead. The woman lost both legs. Guess they should have stayed home, she said. I'm starting to understand why they just sent you, Den said. Good night, Den, she said.